Next, you'll be hearing from Ken Hurtt and David Lowe. David is a producer and client advocate relationship manager for Lockton Companies in Kansas City. And Ken is the CEO of Burwood, a professional services agency passionate about helping clients solve business problems aligned with their corporate social responsibility goals. Ken heads up the alliance with Lockton Companies, where collectively they share a diversity mission as part of a broader strategy to create sustainable jobs and growth opportunities for underrepresented communities and constituents. Please give a warm welcome as we continue to expand our circle of compassion for David and Ken. Gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. Appreciate the time and appreciate you guys including us in this. Unlike Kelly and Lorna, we do not have an exciting product. We don't have socks. We don't have yogurt. We have insurance, right? So everybody runs for the exits when they hear that. So we've got that to overcome as a starting point, Ken. So hopefully we can do that. But no, we appreciate the opportunity here. I think that, and kudos to Graham and Jay for starting this initiative a couple years ago. I attended the conference in 2019 and was really blown away by, the talent and the energy that was assembled in the room. And we're very happy to be a part of this event here and hope to do our part to propagate the mission. Just real briefly, I'll give a quick introduction on kind of my philosophy and sort of why I'm here talking, and then I'm going to get out of the way for the main event for Ken to talk about a business that Lockton's involved with recently, Burwood, and we're very, very excited about. But I think the key point that we wanted to get across is just we are a bigger business. We're 55 years old. We're 8,000 employees, $2 billion in revenues. But that essentially from an early part in my career, it was instilled upon me that business leaders and businesses needed to put their resources and their talents behind social problems and social issues and advancing, the communities that they worked in. In my initial business school class in 1991, University of Michigan, the first thing the dean did was put all 350 of us on buses the day of orientation, sent us all over the state of Michigan, embedded us in communities and community problems, and then as two-year business school students, strongly encouraged us to stay connected to those projects. And so that was a eye-opening experience for me as a young person. And as I'm not as young as I was and have a lot of experience now, I'm trying to propagate the same message out to others. Lockton's 55 years. We're a very simple company in that we have constituents that we focus on of associates, clients, and communities. And keeping our business simple like that allows us to stay focused and keep our eye on the ball. And I'll interject a little more background later on a quick story that I've got there to validate that premise. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ken to introduce himself and get to kind of our main event.
Good afternoon, everyone. And our team is batting cleanup here in the bottom of the ninth, and we're happy to hear that you guys are still with us. And I really am impressed with the crowd. The only promise that I have is that I've got good comedy. And if you stick with me long enough, we can end up perhaps over a virtual happy hour, and I'll be able to share a couple inside jokes. But as my son told me, Dad, don't quit your day job. Don't quit your day job. So we're going to get into it. My background has been in and around the insurance industry as a professional sector, and also in private enterprise as well. Being an engineer by degree in Detroit, I've been active in some private business enterprises that are in and within the automotive supply chain, but more as a practicing professional within the insurance community, and have practiced as a minority business enterprise in that space. We're going to talk a little bit about supplier diversity and how that fits in business and commerce, and right along the lines of how do we get diversity, supplier diversity, migrated into the mainstream of American capitalism and open markets. What America can do is what it is. And we cannot afford as a nation of people to have to be shocked by the trauma of a George Floyd incident to bring us together and move us to action. Those things are too traumatic, obviously. And we have to move from the emotions that stimulate us as a call to action and try to get them orchestrated into strategies and tactics that can be sustainable and modernized. We're going to talk about that a little today. So let's get right into the facts of the matter. Just as an overview, we have a shared history. And I want to say this to a collection of people with various ethnic backgrounds, and particularly coming from the African American community, having been heavily victimized by our past history. What I'd like to say to our Caucasian constituents in our nation is that we have to have the emotional discipline to not take the bait of unnecessary and unfounded guilt, because there's a lot of confusion about sentiment and guilt, because guilt will encumber creativity. And we need everyone in a collective sense to come to the middle. And so we all have these resulting convictions, but we have to exercise the mental and emotional discipline to bring our best, be able to work and collaborate and forge out the things that need to be created to move us forward. And a lot of folks have the question as to, how do I get involved? They're not sure how to. Maybe you live in areas where you don't have broad diversity in your community, you're distant from it, you can't reach it. And so there's a lot of questions about that as well. We want to chat about that. And, you know, you feel that your social profile is too far removed. You just cannot connect with the constituents that need to be engaged. So we need to devise as a mission strategies for inclusion that produce forward effectiveness, as I call it, and create outcomes that are both modernized and sustainable in mainstream American commerce and engagement. They got to be capital based. This is what America can do. It can pause, come off highway onto rest stop, and take time to take in the experiences that we have over the last year. But make no mistake, it's looking to get back on the road and continue to travel in what it does best. And the free market capitalist system is a robust and hardy system. It is very durable. That's the horse we want to ride. We want to put diversity on that horse. And so we need to talk about, how do we devise strategies to do that? So in diversity and inclusion, you have to make sure you make a distinction between inside diversity within an organization, which deals with workforce composition, the diversity of it, the culture, the texture, the practices. And then separate from that is external diversity, which is where supplier diversity lives. And the goal there is through inclusion, through competitive opportunity. That's where we begin to marry to America's culture and existence. And we have to devise strategies that can merge onto and participate in the way that America thinks and understands and exists. And the outcome of that, and we're going to talk about supplier diversity for the most, the outcome of that creates opportunity flow, because our opportunity to change and impact things are in the future. The past is set, the concrete is cured. What we have an opportunity to do is forge a future for progress. So we need to think forward in that sense. And if we can create economic opportunity flow through inclusion, it begins to get to those community constituents, and it creates job inclusion as well as wealth building. And when all the studies show, and I can testify to that coming from that business community, that if we can be effective through open engagement, competition, and participation, that as those minority entrepreneurs win and develop great ideas that can engage in the market and they build wealth, that gravity pretty much can take over from there in a very positive way to create social correction and change. So what I want to do today is chat for a little bit about, okay, how do we move to tactic and strategy? Let's give some examples of how we can build that into business practices, particularly in the closely held business market. And I'll share our Locked in Birdwood Alliance and how we did it kind of as a scapegoat of example and talk about how we thought about it and what we've put together, and we believe it's durable and sustainable. So my background at Burwood, my background is in the industry, as Graham so politely introduced me. I've been in the insurance and the employee benefits industry for a long time, also dubbed as a entrepreneur during that space, and have bought and sold a couple of privately held businesses and participated as a certified minority business enterprise in that space as well. What I'd like to share is the quote I have here, because I believe our nation's best assets are embodied within the people, and the diversity inherent in our society has provided us tremendous talent, creativity, and vision to create highly competitive products and services. And as we go back through history, if you did some digging, you would find very significant players from the Native community, Native American community, as well as the African American community and Hispanic communities. We've come through time that have made considerable contributions to America. And we can find a lot of this information out there in the web world and on PBS, et cetera. But as a diverse organization, we're fiercely committed to building an inclusive business that provides the highest level of excellence to clients seeking to address the gaps to meet their goals, not only in our core industry, but also in diversity and strategy. That's very important to me as a deep conviction. I'm gonna let Dave talk about the Lockton side of our team for a moment, and then I'll dub back and get into our alliance and maybe some modeling that we hope can help in discussions.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. And I just wanted to share a quick, kind of anecdote again that I think is an example of, companies and leaders within companies and how they can tangibly impact communities and, essentially do more good. In 2016, Lockton had its 50th anniversary. We had a worldwide contest for donated hours by each location with local charities. The caveat was that they had to be related to children. I was involved in a board at the time that wasn't, child focused, and so found my way to via that, that Lockton contest and kind of that Lockton community premise to an organization called Lead to Read. It had been founded about 5 years later. At that time, we had 1,200 volunteers reading in elementary schools around Kansas City. There was no board of directors, and it was pretty clear to me when I joined that there was no board for a variety of reasons. Joined originally as boots on the ground as a reader. It's a fantastic experience to get to go through. We're helping the organization's mission is to eradicate third grade reading deficiencies, and it's obviously a worthy goal, with that being one of the leading indicators of future success and self-sufficiency in society. So at that point, 4 years ago, I became a reader, and over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, have now this year I'm serving as chairman of the board. And the board that came into place about 3 years ago has done a significant amount to move the organization, forward. Lockton, again, going back to the three, core sort of stools of the bar stool, or legs of the bar stool, the communities being a big part of that. This is an example where we donate a lot of money as a company, but we've also got a lot of boots on the ground in issues like this, where we're putting our time and talent out there. And I think from the one of the main premises of the day and of the movement is that you can be a capitalist organization, and we are certainly pro-growth and for-profit, no question about it. But at the same time, you can do great good with your resources and your talent, as long as you're purposeful about it. And Ken and I have talked. My view of this is a 1 + 1 = 3. Kind of a model here, in that we're, from a Lockton standpoint, we're obviously giving a lot into the community, and we're helping these kids, learn how to read or reach sufficiency, and we're helping an organization, sustain itself. But Lockton itself as a company gets a great deal out of this. We've got 80 of our associates that go read in schools, once a week. They're standing in hallways together. The people that sort of run our charitable operations feel like this is one of the best opportunities that Lockton has in this realm, because of what it does to glue our associates together. So Lockton is a huge winner. Lead to Read is a huge winner. And just on a personal level, it was said today earlier, and I've read many times over, that in all of our personal search for meaning, the easiest and the best way to go find meaning is to go do something to help somebody else. And this is a case in point that Lockton, with its structure and its commitment to the community, has helped me, go help individuals and lead an organization. So turn it back to you, Ken.
Good. And so what we've done is come together with a meeting of the minds, very centric to what I call soulish leadership and conviction. I think the soul is going to win at the end of life. And the quicker you resolve that and align your talents and intellects and resources to serve that soulish interest, I think you'll be better off and happier as a person. But, today's not Sunday, Dave. I won't preach that lesson. I'll just stop it right there. But so we need true leadership today. We need change. It's massive in scope and need, and it's highly complex, and it's very emotional. We've got to decide. We've got to set chapters and verses to strategy as to what we want to try to accomplish during our 10 years of leadership and fortitude, because energy doesn't last forever. So I'm interested in models that are systemic. We need to harness, in my opinion, the energy that is brought about by social consciousness, albeit through a horrific experience. And we need to harness that energy, much like a horse, and put him in the derby. But we've got to do that in a systemic way in order to sustain. So what Lockton and myself have come together to do, and interesting enough, they had the same idea in mind that I did when we met. That's why the marriage is so well. We forged an alliance under the Burwood organization, and you can see some of those missions that we have in mind to, some of those goals we have in mind to do. So let me tell you how we kind of built the model. Our business is insurance, risk, and trade. Very exciting stuff, right? I'm sure you all have got the trade magazines that you run home and read on Friday. But in any case, that is our business. It's a big economy. It's a big need and a big market in a lot of ways. But what we've done is put diversity and inclusion on top of what we do in trade. And what we're out to do under our core practice is consulting, project management, and fulfillment. But this is the opportunity where diversity can begin to thrive if we can inject it there by design. So we're going to figure out and try to sort out what the problems are and how, and what are the impediments, and then how do we get to it. The MBE challenges are because of lack of relationship in that market. They're not included in the RFP process. They're just out of the flow of opportunity. And then third to that is stakeholders oftentimes make snap judgments about businesses, even if you're small and capable. They just don't know you, and those relationships are in place, and we have to resolve how we're going to get around that. So between Lockton and Burwood, we've come together, and Lockton has made deep commitments and investments. So I says, I want you to show me your soul in your investment of not only capital, because for them that's easy for a small business, but in resource. And I need a couple stern things from you to resolve, because minority businesses are undercapitalized. They've been longly deprived of capital investment, and that's going to have to be dealt with like any other small business. So what Lockton agreed to do with our strategy is to put Burwood between the transaction of themselves and large business. And I says, if we do that, I can structure a model and methods to drive social change, because we have to build an ecosystem that will flow down into the community. But they're small business. This guy is big business. So how do we do that? So here's a systematic roadmap of that large customer who in the middle that has C-suite objectives and diversity and or social responsibility. They all are very motivated to move on it, but the how, I'm finding that they don't understand how to do. They don't know how to metabolize it. You know, what is the tactic method? What I say to them is I want you to express your willingness to do, but let us prescribe how to apply those resources. Because oftentimes they'll express willingness combined or blended with their recommendation as to how to unpack. You know, the last guy that needs to be driving the Uber is the guy without the GPS. We understand what we need. Just help me understand your willingness. And so we want to understand whether their needs are inside in terms of organizational development or are they outside. What we'd like to do in our Lockton Burwood Alliance is the Burwood side of the model deals with these discussions at that level. The Lockton side of our alliance deals with the operators, the folks who, in this case, in insurance, it could be a purchasing agent, a buyer, a controller, or a HR stakeholder. Now, here's the third part of the puzzle, is the mission, the social mission of what we're all talking about today. I'm sorry, let me turn this guy. The social mission of what we're talking about today, in this case, is embodied in the National Minority Supplier Development Council. And that is a trade organization of very large businesses, privately held businesses that have supplier diversity initiatives, and they've come together to share best practices, gold certifications, and these kinds of things. And so if we can tap, their mission is clearly stated and already purged, it's refined. I need to tap this ecosystem to this one. So what we've designed is creating opportunity flow to these small businesses through our strategic thinking. And sorry, folks, through our strategic thinking. And so this is where we are and what we're going to try to build. We've decided to build two strategic models, both in organization development and also in supply chain, to get at these goals. Because remember, small business has to attach to this large corporation. So to go further with our picture, we're now going to drive social change through those models. And this one is about what we call the Burwood supply chain. And that Burwood supply chain is going out and gathering MBEs and WBs in this case as well, that have capabilities within the industry supply. We're looking to build a relationship with those carriers and those providers, understand their strengths, pre-profile them relative to RFP need. We're going to kind of go through an RFI kind of arrangement with them. And as we refine that, we hopefully should be able to have a higher hit rate relative to success and bid win, because we've kind of predefined them when we send out the RFP to them. And then also we complement that with organizational development and consulting inside these organizations to help them breed and bear cultures that are conducive to inclusion. And remember, this is about opportunity through competitive inclusion. This is not about entitlement. We believe that talents are out there in the world. The entrepreneurial and raw thinking of new entrants into every market segment spawn is a critical component of our economic and our commerce ecosystem. And they spawn new ideas, they have free thinking, they have different views. And we've got a considerable amount of our citizenship and constituency that is offline. And that has to be engaged in our society. And as they participate, their proportionate parts of win are just going to play out like any other natural statistic. We do need to deal with getting capital access to these organizations over time. And that's going to be another hurdle altogether. How do we marry capital markets to MBs and diverse companies? Because they're out of the mainstream discussion. One of the biggest challenges in my mind today is culturalism versus racism. And we know that racism does exist, but culturalism is born out of innocent intent, but it can have adverse effects on individuals not from that culture, their impediment to come and play in the broader environment where the dominant culture overwhelmingly states the texture of how you play. And so there exists far more of that than America understands. But if we can have systemic inclusion and let them play and bid, I think that's a better way to move forward than to try to modify culture. That's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of time to do. So, we believe we've come up with some mousetraps that make sense. We'll be out refining those. We're able to make these arguments and stimulate large corporate mission as the right team to build, because the reality is, if you're not going to be willing to partnership and collaborate with your vendor, if you have a true diversity initiative, you simply will not have a successful program. You're not going to send out your RFP in a large scale purchase to MBs and diverse companies and find people that can respond to the scalable need of that scope of work. It's not going to happen. What you're going to do is get a lot of return mail because it cannot happen. You have to say, my mission is true. It's more in my soul and understanding what needs to be done, more than just waving at my new neighbor in the community. I'm going to bake my favorite apple pie, take it down the house and ring the doorbell and welcome them. This is the way you have to be willing to engage to build an effective supplier diversity program. And the issue is more vetting the right team with the leadership capability and texture and competencies than trying to find a suitable vendor that can scale to what you need right now, having been deprived of capital investment and entry for years. It's not going to happen. But there are very capable leadership teams out there and business owners out there that are ready to go. And that's where you really want to focus on vetting. That would be my recommendation to all those that are interested in trying to have an effective supplier diversity program. So inclusion through competitive opportunity is a fair marriage. I think it's sustainable. That opportunity flow can create economic impact through jobs and business ownership. When equity gets into these minority communities, the distribution of that starts to happen. And again, gravity takes over and social progress can begin to move forward. This is not all that's needed in our country, certainly, but it is a viable component because people can build when they have hope, and people have hope when they have opportunity. And if we can spawn that effectively, I think we can make progress. We're out to do it at the Burwood Lockton team. I'd be happy to share or chat with any of you that would like to understand how to devise some strategies to make it happen, because you can do this from where you live. You don't have to try to find a new space or environment to try to exercise your interest in inclusion. You can do it in commerce and in trade.